first off, the Raiders have a 54-man roster. Why? Why not 53? Um, from
Because
what
they
I
can't count.
understand, yeah, RGM can't count. No. Apparently Josh Jacobs was granted to be on an exempt list, uh, not by Josh's request, but by the Raiders' request. So I'm assuming it's just for this, some point of this week, and then they'll have to make a move to get that down to 53. My assumption has been until they started practicing this week that they would just put Brandon Faison, the corner, on IR because he's been injured all of camp. I just figured you get into week one after that cut day and the signing day when the waivers run through, and you can put players on IR, and now it's not the entire season; it's just 4 weeks, right? So that would put us down to 53. We're set to go. But from what I understand, they haven't made any moves yet, so they're still at 54. Um, so before I get into the actual, 54-man roster, I just want to talk about some guys that got cut. I'm on cut day. Number one for me, uh, I don't really understand this. I mean, I guess I kind of do, but they cut Duke Shelley, and I don't know. I felt like he was doing better than David Long, but David Long made the team instead, and David Long was injured and out for multiple weeks. In training camp. So yeah.
Let me tell you why they cut Duke Shelley. It's because the Niners scored a damn touchdown on that play that he should have broken up. That was the exact reason.
Yeah, well, really, when you watch, obviously, I know you're being sarcastic, but when you watch the play, it's like that play was a good reason to keep him. Like,
Yeah,
it was a
the
very heads up
hustle.
play. Yeah. Um, he gave a couple passes against the Cowboys. I don't know. Maybe in during camp was a different story, and maybe once David Long came back, it was clear to them like, oh, he just fits better. I don't know, but that was a little curious to me. Uh, I think a fan favorite as far as undrafted free agents go, Drake Thomas, the linebacker, got cut. A lot of people thought that he was going to make the team. I wasn't so confident, but I thought it was a good, there was a good chance. But they cut him. He gets claimed by the Seahawks. So,
It's always the fucking Seahawks, dude.
yeah. They also cut Jordan Willis, and as the days go on, I get more and more upset about that. And we'll explain why later. They cut Philip Dorsett. He ended up signing with the Broncos. They cut Natani Muti, but he came back on the practice squad. They cut Alex Bars, who started like 13 games last season at right guard. He got outright beat out by, I'm forgetting his name, Van Roten at right guard. Um, Matthew Butler, I want to say fifth round pick from last year, got cut. And then Neil Farrell, defensive tackle. I want to say he was the fourth round pick. It might have been the other way around, but he gets traded to the Kansas City Chiefs for a sixth round pick next year's draft. So,
You know, I just have to say, thank God that he's no longer on the Raiders because every time I hear his name, Doodle Bob pops in my head. I've already told you this on a previous episode, but I just hear Doodle Bob say his name.
Neil Farrell.
No, but all jokes aside, it's pretty sad, but at least he found a team that wanted him with the Chiefs.
Yeah, I just it was a point that I had made before, but I just felt like the defensive tackle room was like really deep, and they just drafted a third round guy in Byron Young, and they also had a seventh round pick in Nesta Jade Silvera, who apparently was making strides in camp and turning heads. So I think they decided to run with those rookies rather than these two second-year guys, and other than that, go with veterans at the position. So let me actually look at the roster. I'm just going to go kind of position by position. I know you have a picture.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull
for
it
website.
up. Yeah.
But I'm kind of going to go a little different than the website. That's the depth chart.
On Raiders.com.
Yeah, I'm going to start at quarterback. So they kept 3. That was a question I had. Were they going to keep Brian Hoyer or not? So Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian Hoyer, Aiden O'Connell. Pretty obvious. Nothing really to say there. At running back, Josh Jacobs is in the building. We are ready for week 1. Although the whole exempt list thing is curious, but Zamir White, Amir Abdullah, Brandon Bolden. Pretty much the same thing. Like nothing really to say there. I think Amir Abdullah is going to be a pass catching specialist for this team. Maybe early on in the season, weeks 1 and 2, they might kind of ease Josh Jacobs a little bit more because he's been out this whole time. Maybe we see a little bit more Zamir White, Amir Abdullah, and even Brandon Bolden, during the Broncos and Bills games. Fullback, Jacob Johnson. Nothing really to say there. Wide receiver. I know they have it in 2 different spots, but I'll start with the top ones. They have Devontae Adams, and they kept Christian Wilkerson. That was the guy sort of, battling it out with Philip Dorsett, Cam Sims, and Keelan Cole. You could see it in the Cowboys game and the Rams game. Christian Wilkerson he was the guy Aiden O'Connell was just looking at. So I think he led the entire preseason in catches. So
like in the entire NFL?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But don't.
It makes sense. O'Connell was lighting it up.
Yeah, that Cowboys game, I think he caught like 8 catches. So
pretty solid.
Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow, DeAndre Carter. He's also going to be the return specialist. Christian Wilkerson, like I said, and Trey Tucker, the rookie 3rd-round pick. At tight end, they kept Austin Hooper as a starter, Michael Mayer, of course, and then Jesper Horsted. I didn't mention him, but they cut, as far as, shocking cuts, I guess. Not shocking, but just I was curious with Cole Fotheringham. No, O.J. Howard was long ago. Cole Fotheringham was a undrafted free agent who really showed out against the Niners. But I didn't notice him as much as the preseason went on, so.
I guess I'll never be able to make that thumbnail.
Fotheringham, yeah. Well, he is on the practice squad, so he might run it back next year.
Yeah. So Hooper's the starter? Sorry to cut you off. Hooper's the starter?
Yeah, you're good. Yes, Hooper's the starter. That's what I expected early on. I think as the season progresses, Michael Mayer will probably demand more and more targets and, snaps. They may not actually admit it unless an injury occurs. But I think by midseason, Michael Mayer will become the starter. But we'll see. It might just be like a 1-2 punch, and then Horsted comes in for blocking downs, rushing downs. So, you sent me that video of Crosby. I feel like you could show it if possible. I'll keep going while you look for it.
Okay. All right.
Left tackle. At left tackle, obviously Colton Miller. They kept Justin Herron as the backup. It's good to have a backup left tackle, so I'm fine with it. Although I think, if Colton Miller has been a stalwart, he has remained healthy for this team, and knock on wood, I hope he stays healthy because he's very important to this offense.
I've got the video pulled up.
Sweet. But I just part of me was thinking okay, you could cut Herron if he's really not that good, and just if worse come to worse, you could put Jermaine Illuminor at a left tackle and Thayer Munford at right. Go ahead and throw that video on. We're talking about Michael Mayer.
Yeah, so this is the video that got Michael Mayer pushed down to back up behind O.J. Howard. Austin Hooper. So let me go ahead and share this.
Hey, watch this.
The noise that it makes, the slam.
Yeah.
It's the slam.
Yeah. Oh, that's rough. That's
Yeah.
That's how you teach a rookie a thing or two.
Yeah, that's like a cutaway in a movie where they go, yeah, Uncle Billy, or I guess Uncle Michael used to play football, but it didn't go so well. They fucking cut away.
Yeah. But funny enough, that was the practice where apparently he was going up against Crosby a lot, and he got quote unquote beat up. And then like the next week, he missed practice due to injuries. So
Yeah, so
that's all I'm
Crosby.
gonna say.
Hey, at the beginning of the episode, we said that Crosby took a team-friendly deal, but he doesn't seem so team-friendly at practice.
Yeah. Well, hey man, Crosby's setting a tempo.
Yeah.
Setting a standard. I don't know, but
It's either match my intensity or get the fuck off the field.
Exactly. So left guard, the only left guard that they have is Dylan Parham, the starter. At center, same thing, only Andre James. At right guard is Greg Van Roten as the starter. And then the backup is Jordan Meredith. And this is one of the interesting things as far as guys that they kept. On the depth chart here, it has Meredith as the backup left guard, center, and right guard. Yeah. That is very valuable. He played a lot of snaps in the preseason, so clearly he proved himself and earned a spot on this team. And I hope that we don't have to see him on the field, but I'm sure at some points we will. And I hope that he's ready for the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Either they have triplets, from the same mother named Jordan Meredith, or Josh McDaniels is being very snarky, and it's like, so what's your plan for if one of your interior offensive linemen go down? I got several plans. Jordan Meredith. It's what it is. It's like a snobby fucking, it's a little snobby move on the depth chart.
Yeah. So, like I said, right tackle, Jermaine Illuminor and Thayer Munford. Munford seems like he's like just so close to cracking into becoming the starter. Illuminor only has 1 year on his deal. I could see Thayer Munford being the starter next year. Potentially, they let Jermaine walk, and it's a battle between Thayer Munford and Dalton Wagner, who was put in IR for this season. That was before the cut down, so he's out for the season. They hold on to him. They don't even allow him to hit the market. They will have Dalton Wagner next season. So, and that was a guy I was very interested in, and I did not want to see them cut him because I figured somebody would pick him up. And I remember when we went over the draft and everything, I mentioned in our first episode, Dalton Wagner was literally the highest paid undrafted free agent this season or this offseason. So it was a guy from the get-go that they were very high on coming out of the draft. And I think clearly they did whatever they could to keep him, which was just stash him on IR. So on to the defense. Left defensive end, if you can scroll down. Max Crosby and Malcolm Kuntz. And I remember in like our first or second episode, I said that Malcolm Kuntz was a guy who was probably right there between 52 and 54 on the roster. Sounds like, including from people like Grant Cohn, who joined our episode or one of our episodes and talked about it. Malcolm Kuntz was showing out this offseason or this preseason, and he was getting a lot of pressure in the preseason, and he definitely earned his spot on this team. And again, we're going to talk about a certain guy who I'm about to name later in the episode, but I think because of this guy, we're going to be seeing a lot more of Malcolm Kuntz this season. So, which brings me to Chandler Jones, that guy that I was talking about at right defensive end. You also have Tyree Wilson sitting behind him. And I would expect to see a lot of Tyree Wilson coming in, on obvious passing downs, when they want to bring in a pass rushing specialist. sort of deal. Yeah, like I said, we'll get to Chandler Jones later. Defensive tackle, they kept six defensive tackles, 4 defensive ends, 60 tackles. Again, like I said, I wasn't the biggest fan of cutting Jordan Willis. Depending on how everything goes with Chandler Jones, I want to see Jordan Willis on this team, at the very least on the practice squad, but I would be in contact with him. Like, hey, we might need you this Sunday. So anyways, Bilal Mickels, Jerry Tillery, the starters at D tackle. John Jenkins, the free agent out of Miami. He's a veteran, like by definition. Like he's been in the league for at least 7 years. I didn't think he was going to make the team. I figured they were going to go a little younger in the depth, but they kept John Jenkins and they kept Adam Butler, another veteran. And then at the bottom is the 2 rookies from this year's draft class, Byron Young and Nestor Jade Silvera. And but I mean, both John Jenkins and Adam Butler were getting some pressure, especially in the Niner game this preseason. And then we didn't even see Tillery or Bilal Mickels, so I think this defense thinks pretty highly about them. So on to linebacker. I've said this before, but on these depth charts, the Raiders have it to where it's 3 linebacker spots: outside linebacker, middle, and outside. I'm pretty sure you're rarely going to see more than 2 linebackers on the field at a time, because they're going to be running a lot of nickel coverages. So I'm just going to kind of I'll go off of what they have. So outside linebacker, they have Robert Spillane and Curtis Bolton. Bolton was a guy that was definitely on the bubble, and right there with Drake Thomas, where I was like, I don't know which guy they keep. But Curtis Bolton got the forced fumble, and he is really, really good on special teams. So I think those things gave him the edge.
Is he related to Nick Bolton, who just played tonight?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Because I was like, damn, did the Raiders let that Bolton guy go and he's this fucking good? I was literally thinking that, like, while watching the Chiefs game, like, just a couple hours ago.
Yeah. No, Nick Bolton, I want to say, was their first-round pick like 2 years ago for the Chiefs. So Curtis Bolton, I want to say, was a Bronco a couple years ago. But I could be wrong on that. And then at middle or inside linebacker, they have Divine Diablo all alone. I'm fairly positive he's going to be wearing the green dot this season. So a lot's going to ride on him. And then at the other outside linebacker position, they have Luke Masterson as the starter and Amari Burney as the backup. And I had no doubt in my mind that Amari Burney was making this team. I thought, if anything, Masterson might have a higher risk of getting cut than Burney, because I really liked what I saw from Burney. And having a pass defending linebacker has been a massive need for this team for so long that any sort of hint of hope that a guy can do that, I would be like, you're staying. So at corner, they have Nate Hobbs starting opposite Marcus Peters, but I'm pretty positive that's not necessarily correct. I'm fairly positive Nate Hobbs will be the nickel corner, and then the starters will be Marcus Peters and 4th-round pick Jacorian Bennett. Along with them is David Long, Amik Robertson, and Brendan Faison. Again, I'm not sure how healthy Faison is. And as far as David Long and Amik Robertson goes, that Cowboy game, if it proved one thing to me, it proved that Amik Robertson deserved to be on this team. And I'm very glad that they kept him. I still am questioning the whole Duke Shelley getting cut instead of David Long, but I'm not a decision maker. I wasn't at practice every day. So, as long as we have the best guys on the roster possible, I'm game. Like, let's just win, And then another thing I think I said episodes ago, but between David Long, Amik Robertson, and Duke Shelley, those are like 3 corners who are like sitting at around 5'10" in height. So I didn't see it being very possible for them to keep all 3 of them. So I knew one of them had to go. On to safety. At free safety, we have Trevon Merrick and Isaiah Polamau. And then at strong safety, we have Marcus Epps, Roderick Teamer, another guy that I was pretty confident based off the preseason was going to make this team, and Chris Smith, the 5th-round pick. I figured it would be pretty hard for them to cut a 5th-round pick, but I didn't notice Chris Smith too much, but I think he'll be a special teamer and hopefully develop into a guy that could play some snaps on defense. And then lastly, the obvious last three, Daniel Carlson, AJ Cole, and long snapper Jacob Bobenmeyer. And that's your 54-man roster, baby. Definitely not final, but we'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And then next up is for the next topic.
Oh, you got to go over the team captains.
Team captains.
Sorry, I thought I was hearing something like outside. That's why I don't know if you saw me like a minute ago. Like I took off my head, like one of my headphones.
No, you're good. Yeah, you're good.
That's why it took me a second to scroll down too. But yeah, Mike, tell us about the Raider team captains. Like, how many did they keep?
Yeah, team captains. The Niners had 6. Right?
Yes. Yeah. I think the most they can have is 7.
The Raiders have 9. Maybe that's the most you can have. I don't know who makes the rules for this, but yeah, I mean, last year I want to say the Raiders had like 7 or 8, and I was like, dude, I remember like in 2015 and before that, you couldn't have more than like 5, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I was like fairly positive. Like you can only have so many. And usually what they would do, obviously, is like you'd have like 2 offensive, 2 defensive, and then a special teams captain. But now it's just apparently it's free game.
If I was the coach, you know how many captains I would have?
53.
I would have 53 because on my team, everyone's a captain.
Everybody gets their special star.
Yeah,
so the captains
everyone
for the
gets
Raiders,
a patch.
Captains for the Raiders, the obvious, Jimmy G. I'm going to keep it on offense. Josh Jacobs, even though he was not there at all. But just because he's a returning player and all that. And I think they were all confident he was going to be on the team. So then, and also, of course, they announced the team captains after he was signed. So maybe they just quickly were like, oh, let's add that in there, Devontae Adams. This one, I don't remember if he was a captain last year, but this was one that I was definitely curious. Colton Miller got the captain nod. Max Crosby, of course. Robert Spillane at linebacker. And then this one doesn't exactly shock me. And I'm very curious how this guy plays this season because we really didn't get to see much of him in the preseason. Marcus Epps at safety is a captain. This is he along with Robert Spillane. This is their first year on this team. So I think that's interesting. AJ Cole and Daniel Carlson are also captains.
It kind of reminds me of when Mac Hollins was a captain out of nowhere last year.
Yeah, true. So the biggest non-captains, omissions or whatever you want to call it, when I predicted captains, like one of my buddies texted me, like, who do you think is going to be the captains, like a day or two before it came out? I had most of these guys named, besides like Spillane and Epps. Instead of Epps, I had Marcus Peters as a captain, but that didn't happen. And I mostly had that because I had heard so much about like Marcus or Jacorian Bennett and other guys, really leaning on Marcus Peters for his knowledge and such. And then the other guy who was a captain last season, and again, we're going to talk about him, is Chandler Jones. And he's not a captain this year.
I wonder why.
Bear in mind, the team, the roster votes on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I find it interesting. Okay.
Well, the roster may vote on it, but one thing I'll say is I think the way that the 49ers do it on their end of it is that I I think Shanahan provides a list of people to vote for, and then like from there they vote on it. So I don't know if the Raiders do it differently to where like anybody, it's just fair game, or I don't know if Josh McDaniels picks up like a pool of players, and I wonder if Chandler Jones was one of those players, or if they even do it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, again, as I keep saying, we'll get into Chandler Jones. It's entirely possible that the Raiders told the players, like, hey, based off of what's going on, we cannot make him a captain, So, yeah, but we can move on to the practice squad. Really quick here. First off, the international player program guy, David Agoha from Nigeria. He made the practice squad. And we said this earlier, but having a player from the international player program grants you the ability to have an extra player on the practice squad. And I think you said this earlier, but maybe it was before the episode.
It was before the stream started. So
yeah,
you get that extra roster spot on the practice squad that they don't count towards the practice squad. It's not the 53.
Okay. Correct. Yeah. I just figured, I was like, there's no way you can have 54, even though the Raiders currently have 54, but that's exempt. That player cannot play right now, Yeah. So on the practice squad, it makes sense because it's like, oh, we can kind of keep you and teach you, but like you're not going to play, right? Tyler Hall, that was a corner who coming into this season was getting a lot of hype as like a nickel and whatnot, but it came out pretty quick that the Raiders wanted Nate Hobbs at nickel, and that told me pretty quickly, like, well, I don't see how you keep Tyler Hall, but keeping him on the practice squad is great. That is great to have. Matthew Butler, that 4th or 5th round pick, whatever he was, I'm pretty sure he was the 5th round pick. Sorry. He is on the practice squad, so he's still within the organization, so that's cool. Natani Muti, back on the practice squad. He was the backup left guard. He started every preseason game, other than the Niner game when Dylan Parham got knocked out. Sam Webb, corner, he's on the practice squad. That was a guy that I saw a lot of comments of, fans saying like, oh man, I was really curious if Sam Webb was going to make the team. He's still young. He has time to develop and possibly make the team next year or this year, depending. Jaden Grant, safety. John Samuel Shanker, tight end. Sincere McCormick, running back. He was making a lot of plays, specifically touchdowns in the preseason, so I like seeing him on the practice squad. Isaac Rochelle, defensive end. He was getting a lot of pressure, I felt, in the preseason, so I like seeing him on the practice squad. And McClendon Curtis, that was another guy that they cut and was kind of like, I was curious to see what happened. McClendon Curtis, the undrafted free agent out of, I want to say, Chattanooga. That was a guy, that got a lot of hype coming out of the draft. And, he's, as of right now, he's on the practice squad. Hopefully nobody claims him. Cole Fotheringham, the tight end, also on the practice squad. Kanai Mauga, linebacker, on the practice squad. Marquez Callaway, wide receiver. Isaac Darkangelo. This was a guy who was not on the roster at all. I'm pretty sure he's a linebacker. Janarius Robinson, same deal, not on the roster previously. He's a defensive end. Cronus Grassu is the backup, was the backup center. He's on the practice squad. I like that for potential depth. And then Keelan Cole just recently got signed to the practice squad, wide receiver. So, and he was on the practice squad last year, and I like having him. He looked good in the preseason. Like, I wouldn't have been overly shocked if he made the team, but I like that he's on the practice squad. And I like Christian Wilkerson. So